He walked in to be served and left, believing he ruled the world. The next day, one detail about the waitress turned his luxury into shame. What if power didn't fit on the check? One choice, one secret, one encounter that shatters certainties. The dining room at Cielo de Salamanca held its breath like a theatre between acts. Outside, the Upper East Side hummed with October cold, taxis bleeding red through the dark. But inside the restaurant, the air stayed warm, expensive, scented with saffron and good wine. Ethan Marquez sat at table 7, the corner booth with velvet upholstery that cost more than most people's rent. He'd arrived late, irritated by a conference call that had run long, and now he wanted control back, the kind of control money always promised him. Elena Duarte approached with a water pitcher and a menu, her uniform pressed sharp, her hair pulled into a bun that showed the clean line of her neck. She was 25, but carried herself older, the way people do when they've been responsible for someone else since they were barely adults themselves. Her hands were steady. Her voice, when she spoke, was measured and soft, the accent of someone who'd learned English as a second language, but spoke it with care. "Good evening. Can I start you with something to drink?" Ethan looked up, and something in him, something ugly and familiar, rose to the surface. He'd had a bad day. He'd had a bad year, really, full of meetings where people said yes but meant maybe, full of deals that felt hollow the moment the ink dried. And here was this woman, this server, speaking to him in accented English, and he wanted, what? To prove something? To feel big? He pulled a bill from his pocket. $1,000, crisp and new. He laid it on the table between them like a challenge. "I'll give you this," he said, loud enough that the tables around them paused mid-conversation, "if you speak to me in English for the rest of the night." The room didn't just go quiet. It crystallized, every sound sharpening into focus. The clink of a fork against porcelain, someone's sudden inhale, the hiss of the espresso machine behind the bar. Elena's hand tightened around the pitcher. Water trembled at the rim but didn't spill. She looked at the bill, then at Ethan, and her face didn't change. Not a flinch, not a flicker. But her eyes, dark and steady, saw him completely. "Would you like the wine list?" she said in perfect, unaccented English, each word a small stone dropped into still water. "Or should I start by teaching you basic manners?" Silence fell like snow. Ethan felt it then. The thing he'd been running from all day, all year, maybe his whole life. Shame. It wrapped around his throat, thick and choking. He saw himself reflected in the question, a man with too much money and too little grace, repeating the same cruelties he'd once promised himself he'd never become. Around the room, people stared. A woman at table 3 raised her phone. The moment was being recorded, sealed, made permanent. Ethan stood, his chair scraping hard against the wood floor. He didn't take the $1,000. He left it there, an apology or an insult. He couldn't tell which. He walked out into the October night, and the cold hit him like absolution he hadn't earned yet. Ethan didn't sleep. He lay in his penthouse apartment on East 72nd Street, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene in his head until it wore grooves into his memory. At 4 a.m, he got up, made coffee he didn't drink, and stood by the window watching the city wake. Garbage trucks growled down Lexington Avenue. Delivery vans double-parked outside bodegas. The world moved forward without him, indifferent to his disgrace. By 8 he was dressed. Jeans, a plain sweater, no watch. He walked the 20 blocks to Cielo de Salamanca, rehearsing an apology he knew wouldn't be enough. The restaurant didn't open until 11 for lunch service, but the back door was propped open for deliveries. He slipped inside, past crates of vegetables and stacked wine boxes, following the sound of voices toward the kitchen. A man in chef's whites looked up, surprised. "We're not open yet." "I know. I'm looking for Elena. Elena Duarte." The chef studied him, recognition dawning slowly. You're the guy from last night. Ethan nodded. He felt smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. She doesn't start until 10, the chef said, his voice careful, protective. But I'll tell you something, since you're here. Elena's not just a server. She was at Hunter College, English Lit, full ride, before her father died and she had to drop out to take care of her brother. Kid's got asthma, needs regular appointments, needs someone watching him after school. She works doubles most weeks, so whatever you think you know about her, you don't. The words landed like fists. Ethan thanked him, a hollow automatic gesture, and left. He waited across the street in a coffee shop, nursing an Americano that went cold in his hands, until he saw Elena arrive. She wore the same pressed uniform, the same tied-back hair. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep, and everything to do with carrying weight no one should have to carry alone. He crossed the street before he could lose his nerve. Elena. She turned, and he saw her recognize him, saw her shoulders tense just slightly, a preparation for whatever came next. I owe you an apology, Ethan said. His voice came out quieter than he'd intended. What I did last night was wrong. It was cruel and stupid, and I'm sorry. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Around them, the city noise swelled. Sirens, horns, the rattle of a construction site. Finally, she spoke. I accept your apology. But I need you to understand something. I need this job. I can't afford to lose it because some customer decides I'm too mouthy or too proud. So if you're here to make trouble, please just go. I'm not here, and to make trouble, Ethan said. I just wanted you to know I was wrong. She nodded, her face unreadable, and walked past him into the restaurant. Ethan stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the particular loneliness of being forgiven without being absolved. By Monday, the video had 17,000 views. Someone had posted it to Twitter with the caption, "Millionaire tries to humiliate server, gets destroyed," and the internet did what the internet does. It amplified, distorted, made mythology out of a 30-second clip. Comment sections filled with speculation. Who was the server? Who was the man? What happened next? Inside Cielo de Salamanca, the fallout was quieter, but no less dangerous. Sofia Noguera, the restaurant's owner, sat in her office with the door closed, fielding calls from regulars who wanted to know if the restaurant was still a safe space for people of quality. The phrasing made Sofia's stomach turn, but she was a pragmatist. She'd opened Cielo with a loan she was still paying off, and she couldn't afford to lose her base. She called Elena in after the lunch rush. Elena stood in the doorway, still wearing her apron, smelling faintly of garlic and exhaustion. Sit, Sofia said. Elena sat. I'm going to be direct, Sofia continued. I've had 12 calls today. Half of them want me to fire you. The other half think you're a hero. Either way, you're a problem. Eleanor's face didn't change, but her hands curled tight in her lap. I didn't do anything wrong. I know that. But perception matters. And right now, some of our best customers are uncomfortable. So, what are you saying? Sofia hesitated. She liked Elena, liked her work ethic, her steady hands, the way she trained new hires with patience, even when she was dead on her feet. But business was business. I'm saying I need to think about what's best for the restaurant. Eleanor stood. If you're going to fire me, just do it. Don't make me wait. Before Sofia could answer, there was a knock at the door. It opened without invitation, and Ethan Marquez stepped inside. He looked at Sofia, then at Eleanor, and something in his expression was different from the night he'd laid that $1,000 on the table. He looked like a man who'd made a decision. Don't fire her, Ethan said. Sofia blinked. Excuse me? I'm an investor in this restaurant. I have a say, and I'm saying, don't fire her. This isn't your decision, Sofia said, her voice sharp. Then let's make it a board decision. Call a meeting. I'll take full responsibility for what happened. I'll submit a formal apology. but Elena Duarte keeps her job. Sophia stared at him, calculating. Ethan was a minority partner, but his name carried weight, and more importantly, his money did. "Fine," she said finally. "But if this blows up in my face, it's on you." Ethan nodded. "Fair enough." Elena looked between them, confusion and something like anger flickering across her face. When Sophia dismissed them both, Eleanor followed Ethan out into the hallway. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Because it was the right thing to do. I don't need you to save me." "I know," Ethan said. "But I needed to try." Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what the chef had told him. Elena had been at Hunter College. Full ride. English literature. A life interrupted. Not by choice, but by necessity. The image haunted him. A young woman sitting in a classroom taking notes, dreaming of something beyond service and survival, and then the call that changed everything. "Your father's gone. Your brother needs you." The dream deferred indefinitely. He took the problem to the Marquez Foundation, the non-profit arm of his family's holding company. The foundation had been his grandfather's project originally, offering scholarships in engineering and business, practical fields for practical futures. Ethan had always thought it was fine, if a little soulless. Now he wondered if they could do something different. "I want to create a new category," he told the director, a sharp woman named Patricia, who'd been running the foundation for 15 years. "For students who had to leave school for financial reasons, non-traditional students, people who need a second chance." Patricia leaned back in her chair, skeptical. "That's a nice idea, Ethan, but it's expensive. And the selection process gets complicated. How do you verify need? How do you make sure it's not just a handout?" "We use professors for recommendations. We make it anonymous. No names, just application numbers. We interview on Saturdays, so people don't have to miss work. We cover tuition, books, transportation, and we require them to maintain a B average, so it's not charity, it's investment." Patricia studied him. "This is about that server, isn't it? The one from the video." "This is about doing something that matters," Ethan said. Patricia sighed. "All right, let's build it." 2 months later, the scholarship opened for applications. Elena didn't know about it. Ethan had been careful not to mention her name to anyone at the foundation, not even Patricia. But Eleanor's old academic advisor at Hunter, Dr. Morrison, had kept Eleanor's essays from her freshman year, the ones that had earned her the original scholarship, and when Dr. Morrison saw the announcement, she called Elena immediately. "Apply," Dr. Morrison said. "This is made for you." Elena filled out the application at 2 a.m. after a double shift, her brother asleep in the next room. She didn't let herself hope. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. But she sent it in anyway, and then she waited. The call came 3 weeks later. She'd been selected for an interview. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, at the foundation offices in Midtown. Eleanor borrowed a blazer from a co-worker, took the subway uptown, and sat in a clean, modern waiting room that smelled like new carpet and possibility. The interview was formal, professional. 3 panelists, none of them Ethan. They asked about her goals, her challenges, how she balanced work and school before she'd had to drop out. Elena answered honestly. When they asked why she wanted to return to school, she paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because it's the only thing I ever wanted for myself," she said. "And I want my brother to see that wanting something for yourself isn't selfish. It's survival." 2 weeks after that, the letter arrived. She'd been accepted. Full tuition, books, transportation stipend, academic mentoring included. The only requirement, maintain a 3.0 GPA and meet with a mentor once a month. Elena sat on the edge of her bed holding the letter and let herself cry for the first time in 3 years. Life became a dance of minutes. Eleanor's alarm went off at 5:30 every morning, early enough to make Nico breakfast before he left for school, early enough to catch the 6:45 express train to Hunter's campus in the Upper East Side. Her first class started at 8. By noon, she was on the subway again, heading to Cielo de Salamanca for the lunch shift. She worked until 4, then took the train uptown to meet Nico at the community health clinic in Harlem for his bi-weekly checkups. The clinic waiting room was always the same. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, a TV playing daytime talk shows no one watched. Nico sat beside her doing homework, his inhaler tucked in his backpack like a talisman. He was 14, skinny and serious, with their father's dark eyes and their mother's quiet resilience. He never complained about the appointments, never asked why he had to spend his afternoons in waiting rooms instead of playing basketball with his friends. "How's school?" Elena asked him one Wednesday, while they waited for the nurse to call his name. "Fine," Nico said, not looking up from his math textbook. "Just fine." He shrugged. "Mr. Hassan says I should apply to Stuyvesant for high school. Says I'm smart enough." Eleanor felt something catch in her chest. Pride and fear tangled together. Stuyvesant was one of the best public high schools in the city, but it was competitive, demanding. "Do you want to go?" Nico looked at her then, his expression guarded. "Would it be okay? I know you're already paying for a lot." "Nico," Elena said, and she reached over to squeeze his hand. "If you want to go to Stuyvesant, we'll figure it out. You hear me?" He nodded, and something in his face relaxed. At night, after her evening shift at Cielo, after she'd scrubbed down tables and counted tips and ridden the subway home to their apartment in Washington Heights, Elena sat at the kitchen table with her books. She read critical theory and 19th century novels, wrote essays about symbolism and narrative structure, her handwriting getting sloppier as the hours wore on. By midnight, her eyes burned. By 1, she could barely focus. But she kept going, because this was the deal she'd made with herself. No excuses, no shortcuts, no giving up. The first serious crisis came in October. Elena failed her phonetics midterm by half a point. The professor, Dr. Chen, was kind but firm. "You need to master the international phonetic alphabet. There's no way around it." Elena nodded, her throat tight. That night, she walked home from the subway in the rain, her coat soaked through, and let herself feel the weight of it all. The exhaustion, the constant calculation of hours and dollars, the fear that she'd fail Nico, fail herself, fail everyone who'd invested in her. She thought about quitting. Just for a moment, she let herself imagine it, dropping out again, picking up more shifts, making life simple and small and manageable. Then she got home, and Nico was at the kitchen table doing his math homework, and he looked up and said, "Hey, you okay?" And Elena realized she couldn't quit. Not because of the scholarship, not because of pride, but because Nico was watching, learning what it meant to keep going when things got hard. "I'm okay," she said, "just tired." She went to Dr. Chen's office hours the next day. She asked for extra practice sheets. She drilled IPA symbols every night for 3 weeks on the subway, between tables, in the minutes before sleep. When she retook the exam, she scored a 92. The cost was a swapped shift. A co-worker named Lisa had covered her Thursday evening so she could study, and Lisa charged her 2 Friday nights in return. Elena worked until 2 in the morning both nights, her feet screaming, her back aching. But she didn't complain. This was the price. She paid it. Ethan stopped going to the foundation galas. He stopped accepting invitations to investor dinners, stopped showing up at restaurant openings where everyone wanted to network. He told himself it was because he was busy, but the truth was simpler. He was ashamed. Not just of the scene at Cielo, though that still woke him up some nights in a cold sweat, but of the life he'd been living before it. A life measured in returns and exits, where people were assets or obstacles, where nothing mattered except the next deal. Instead, he started spending time at Cielo de Salamanca as a regular customer. Not table 7, He couldn't bring himself to sit there again. But at the bar, during slow afternoons, when the restaurant was quiet and the staff could breathe, he ordered coffee and read the newspaper. He listened to the rhythm of the place, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of prep work in the kitchen, the low hum of conversation between servers during lulls. He learned their names. Marco, the line cook who'd emigrated from Puebla and sent money home to his mother every month. Lisa, the hostess who was studying interior design at night. Jorge, the dishwasher who'd been working at Cielo for 12 years and knew every inch of the place. And Eleanor, always Eleanor, moving through the dining room with a grace that looked effortless but wasn't. He saw how she trained the new hires, patient even when they messed up orders. He saw how she stayed late to help with closing, even when she wasn't scheduled. He saw the exhaustion she carried like a second skin. One afternoon in November, Sophia called him into her office. "We need to talk about the scholarship," she said. Ethan went still. "What about it?" "I know it was you," Sophia said. "I know you created that program for Eleanor." "It's for a lot of people," Ethan said carefully. "Eleanor just happened to qualify." "Don't bullshit me, Ethan. You think I'm stupid?" Sophia leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Here's my question. What happens when she finds out? Because she will find out eventually. And when she does, is she going to feel grateful? Or is she going to feel manipulated?" The question hit him like a punch to the sternum. "I don't know," he admitted. "Figure it out," Sophia said. "Because if this blows up, it's not just your reputation on the line. It's hers too." That night, Ethan called Patricia at the foundation. "I need you to do something," he said. "I need you to expand the health coverage option for scholarship recipients. Not just Elena, everyone in the program. If a scholar has a family member who needs medical support, the foundation can help cover costs. No questions. No publicity." "That's going to be expensive," Patricia warned. "I'll cover it personally," Ethan said. "Just make it happen." 3 weeks later, Nico had an asthma attack. Not severe, but enough that he needed a new inhaler and a follow-up with a specialist. The medication cost $400, and Elena's insurance wouldn't cover it until the new year. She was calculating how to stretch her tips, how to ask for an advance on her paycheck, when the foundation's caseworker called. "Ms. Duarte, I'm reaching out because you're eligible for our family health support program. We can cover the cost of your brother's medication and his specialist appointment." Elena's hands shook. "I don't understand. I didn't apply for that." "It's part of the scholarship package," the caseworker explained. "All recipients have access to it." When Elena hung up, she sat on her bed and cried. It felt like a miracle. It felt like someone, somewhere, was watching out for her. She didn't know that someone was Ethan, sitting in his apartment across town, hoping he'd done the right thing. The day Nico's specialist appointment came, Elena left her morning shift early. She'd arranged it with Sophia, traded a Sunday brunch shift, the most lucrative one of the week, and taken the 2 train uptown to the clinic. The waiting room was crowded, full of parents and kids, and the low buzz of anxiety. Elena checked in at the desk, then found a seat near the window. Nico sat beside her, earbuds in, pretending he wasn't nervous. She was filling out insurance forms when she felt someone sit down next to her. She looked up. Ethan Marquez was there, in jeans and a sweater, holding 2 paper cups of coffee from the bodega across the street. "What are you doing here?" Elena asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "I was in the neighborhood," Ethan said, which was such an obvious lie that Elena almost laughed. He handed her one of the coffees. "I thought you might need this." Elena looked at the coffee, then at him. She should tell him to leave. She should tell him this was crossing a line. But she was tired, and the coffee was warm, and something in his expression, something tentative and genuine, made her pause. "You can stay," she said quietly. "But just in the waiting room. When they call us back, you're not coming." Fair enough, Ethan said. They sat in silence for a while. Around them, the clinic hummed with life. A baby crying, a nurse calling names, a janitor mopping the floor in slow, methodical strokes. Ethan watched it all, taking it in. He'd never been to a place like this before. A public clinic where people waited for hours because they had no other choice, where the paint was peeling and the chairs were broken and the TV played daytime talk shows no one watched. How often does Nico have to come here? Ethan asked. Every 2 weeks, Elena said. More if he has a flare-up. And how long do you usually wait? Depends. Sometimes an hour, sometimes 3. Ethan did the math in his head. 3 hours, twice a month, plus travel time, plus the stress of managing schedules and making sure Nico didn't miss school. He thought about his own doctor, a concierge physician who made house calls, who answered emails at midnight, who never made him wait. I'm sorry, Ethan said. For what? For not understanding, for not seeing it. Elena looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression softened. You're seeing it now. When the nurse called Nico's name, Elena stood. Wait here, she said to Ethan, but 10 minutes later she came back out. He's asking for you, she said, her voice uncertain. I don't know why, but he wants you to come back. Ethan followed her down the narrow hallway to an examination room where Nico sat on the paper-covered table, his inhaler in his hand. The boy looked at Ethan with something like defiance. Elena says you helped pay for this, Nico said, gesturing to the inhaler. Is that true? Ethan glanced at Elena, who looked just as surprised. The foundation helped, Ethan said carefully. But it's not charity. You earned it because your sister earned it. Nico considered this. So you're not just doing this to impress her? Nico, Elena started, but Ethan held up a hand. That's a fair question, he said. He looked at the boy, this skinny 14-year-old with sharp eyes and his sister's stubborn pride, and decided to tell the truth. I did something really stupid a few months ago. I hurt your sister in public, and I've been trying to figure out how to make it right. So yeah, maybe part of this is about her, but it's also about trying to be less of an asshole in general. Nico blinked. Then slowly he smiled. Okay, he said, that's fair. After the appointment, the 3 of them walked to the subway together. Ethan offered to drive them, but Elena shook her head. We're fine, she said, but her tone was gentler than it had been in the clinic. At the turnstile, Nico looked back at Ethan. Thanks for the inhaler money, he said. Anytime, Ethan said. As they disappeared down the stairs to the platform, Ethan stood on the sidewalk, watching the city move around him. For the first time in years, he felt like he'd done something that mattered. The item appeared in page 6 on a Tuesday morning. Eleanor saw it during her break, scrolling through her phone while she ate a turkey sandwich in the back hallway of Cielo. The headline read, Millionaire investor plays white knight for his favorite waitress. The article was short, snide, full of insinuations. It mentioned Ethan by name, called him a restaurant investor with a history of public gaffes, and suggested that his foundation scholarship was a thinly veiled attempt to buy affection from a young service worker he'd previously humiliated. It didn't name Elena, but it didn't have to. Anyone who'd seen the video would know. Elena's hands went cold. She read the article twice, then a third time, each word sinking deeper. This was her life, her struggle, her exhaustion, her small victories, reduced to gossip, to a punchline. She felt exposed, stripped bare, as if someone had reached inside her and pulled out everything tender and private and held it up for strangers to laugh at. She showed the article to Lisa, the hostess, who read it and grimaced. That's messed up, Lisa said. You know it's not true, right? Doesn't matter, Elena said. People will believe it anyway. By the end of the lunch shift, the whispers had started. Elena felt them like heat on her skin, the sideways glances from other servers, the sudden silence when she walked into the break room. No one said anything to her face, but she knew what they were thinking. Did she sleep with him? Did she use him? Is any of this real? When Sophia called her into the office after the dinner rush, Eleanor's stomach dropped. "I'm moving you to the stockroom," Sophia said, her voice brisk, businesslike. "Just temporarily, until this blows over." "I didn't do anything wrong," Eleanor said. "I know that. But the optics are bad, and I can't have the staff distracted by gossip. The stockroom is a demotion, you know that." "It's an internal rotation," Sophia said. "You'll still get the same pay." "It's punishment," Elena said, her voice rising. "You're punishing me because some tabloid decided to write about my life without my permission." Before Sophia could respond, the door opened. Ethan walked in, and this time he didn't ask permission, didn't knock. He looked at Sophia, then at Elena, and his expression was harder than Elena had ever seen it. "You're not moving her," Ethan said. "This is an operational decision," Sophia said. "It's not your call." "Then let's make it official," Ethan said. "I'm requesting a performance audit. The contracts allow for it. I wrote that clause in myself. We'll bring in an independent firm to review employee satisfaction, guest feedback, training metrics. If the audit shows Elena is a liability, fine, move her. But if it shows she's an asset, and we both know it will, then she stays on the floor." Sophia's jaw tightened. She hated being backed into corners, hated when investors pulled rank, but she was also smart enough to know when she'd lost. "Fine," she said. "We'll do the audit." 2 weeks later, the results came back. Eleanor had the highest guest satisfaction scores on the floor. She'd trained 4 new hires in the past year, all of whom were still employed. She'd resolved customer complaints with professionalism and grace. The report recommended not only keeping her in her current position, but also promoting her to lead server. Sophia read the report in her office, alone, and felt the sting of being wrong. But she was pragmatic. Numbers didn't lie. She kept Elena on the floor. The cost, though, was a chill that settled between her and Ethan. They spoke only in meetings now, and even then the conversations were clipped, transactional. The restaurant ran smoothly, but the partnership was fracturing. Respect turned into affection so gradually that neither of them noticed when it happened. There was no single moment, no grand gesture, just a slow accumulation of small kindnesses that, together, added up to something neither of them could name yet. Elena started texting Ethan when the foundation had outreach events, just to make sure the team arrived safely. "Did everyone get home okay?" she'd write, and he'd respond, "Yes, all good. Thank you for asking." It was small, but it mattered. Ethan started stopping by Cielo in the mornings before it opened, ordering coffee at the bar while the staff prepped for service. He'd ask about Nico, not in a nosy way, but with genuine interest. How did his math test go? Did the new inhaler help? Elena would answer, surprised each time that he remembered the details. One evening in January, a hailstorm knocked out power to half the subway lines. Elena's shift ended at 10, and she stood on the sidewalk in the cold, trying to figure out how to get home. The buses were packed, the taxis full. She was pulling up a rideshare app when Ethan appeared beside her. "I've got a car," he said. "Let me give you a ride." "I'm fine," Elena said automatically. "Elena," Ethan said, and his voice was gentle. "It's hailing. Let me drive you." She looked at him, at the way the streetlights caught the exhaustion in his face, at the way he stood there waiting, not pushing, just offering, and she nodded. In the car, they didn't talk much. The driver navigated through the storm, wipers working overtime, while Elena watched the city blur past her window. When they pulled up to her building in Washington Heights, Ethan didn't get out. He just said, "Text me when you're inside, so I know you got home safe." Elena texted him. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. It was such a small, ordinary thing, but it stayed with her all night. The next week, Nico invited Ethan to his school's book club. The club met on Thursday evenings in the library of a public high school near Inwood, run by Mr. Hassan, Nico's history teacher. Ethan hadn't read fiction for pleasure in years. His bedside table was stacked with business books and economic reports, but he said yes because Nico asked, and because he was curious what Elena's brother cared about. The book was The House on Mango Street. They sat in a circle, 15 teenagers, and Mr. Hassan and Ethan, the only adult who wasn't a teacher. The kids debated the symbolism of the house, the meaning of names, the pain of growing up in a place that doesn't feel like home. Nico spoke passionately about belonging, about the difference between where you're from and where you're going. Ethan listened, and something in him, something he'd thought was dead, woke up. After the meeting, Nico introduced him to Mr. Hassan. "This is Ethan," Nico said. He paused, searching for the right word. "He's a friend." Ethan felt the words settle over him, like a benediction. On the subway ride home, Ethan thought about Elena finishing her degree. He understood now what it meant to her. Not just a credential, but a reclaiming of herself, a refusal to let circumstances define her limits. He thought about the book club, about Nico talking about belonging, and he realized that Eleanor needed to finish school for the same reason Nico needed to go to Stuyvesant, because it was a way of saying, "I'm more than this moment. I'm more than what happened to me." That night, Ethan texted Eleanor, "Your brother is remarkable." She responded, "I know. He gets it from our father." "I think he gets it from you," Ethan wrote back. Eleanor didn't respond, but when he saw her the next day at Cielo, she smiled at him, and the smile reached her eyes. By the end of Eleanor's first year in the scholarship program, she'd made up 12 credits, stabilized Nico's health with a new treatment plan, and organized her finances with a system her mother had taught her. One envelope for rent, one for transportation, one for food, one for emergencies. The envelopes sat in a drawer in the kitchen, each one carefully labeled in her mother's handwriting, a ghost reaching forward to help her daughter survive. Nico got into Stuyvesant. The letter came on a Friday afternoon in March, and he stood in the kitchen holding it, his hands shaking. Elena was at work, so he called her during her break. "I got in," he said, his voice cracking. "Elena, I got in." She left work early, something she never did, and took the train home. They went to the bodega on the corner and bought a pint of ice cream, chocolate chip, and ate it straight from the container on the fire escape while the city hummed below them. It was cold, but neither of them cared. "Dad would be proud," Nico said. "He would," Elena agreed. "Mom too." They sat in silence for a while, two siblings who'd survived by holding tight to each other, and let themselves feel something they hadn't felt in years: hope. That spring, the foundation invited Elena to apply for an internship in their cultural mediation program, which helped new immigrants navigate city services. The position would require her to leave her Friday evening shift early, the second busiest night of the week, the one that paid the best tips. When Elena told Sophia, the owner's face hardened. "I can't afford to lose you on Fridays," Sophia said. "It's just 2 hours," Elena said. "I can work the early part of the shift." 2 hours on a Friday is a quarter of my revenue, Sophia said. "I'm sorry, Eleanor, but no." Eleanor felt the door closing, felt opportunity slipping through her fingers. She left the office feeling defeated, wondering if she'd have to choose between the internship and the job that paid her rent. That night, Ethan came in for dinner. He sat at the bar, and Elena brought him water without being asked. He could see something was wrong, the way her shoulders curved inward, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "What happened?" he asked. Eleanor hesitated. She didn't want to burden him, didn't want to seem like she was asking for favors, but she was tired of carrying everything alone. "The foundation offered me an internship," she said quietly, "but it conflicts with my Friday shift, and Sophia won't let me adjust my schedule. Ethan set down his water glass. Let me talk to her. No, Elena said quickly. I don't want you to fix this for me. I'm not fixing it for you, Ethan said. I'm proposing a business solution. The restaurant needs coverage on Friday nights. I'll fund the hiring and training of a new hostess, someone who can split the Friday shift with you. Sophia gets consistent staffing. You get to take the internship, and I invest in the restaurant's stability. Everyone wins. Elena looked at him, searching his face for signs of pity or condescension. She found neither, just pragmatism and something else she was starting to recognize. Care. Okay, she said, but I'm training whoever you hire. I'm not leaving the team with someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Deal, Ethan said. The new hostess was named Maya, a 22-year-old from the Bronx who'd worked at diners and cafes and knew how to handle difficult customers. Elena trained her for 3 weeks, teaching her the rhythm of the dining room, the names of the regulars, how to read a table's mood before approaching. Maya was quick, sharp, grateful for the patience. By the end of the month, she could handle the Friday shift without supervision. Elena started the internship in May. She worked at the foundation's offices on Friday afternoons, helping immigrant families fill out paperwork, make appointments, understand their rights. The work was exhausting. So many stories of loss and displacement, so much bureaucracy that seemed designed to wear people down. But it was also meaningful in a way waiting tables had never been. She was using her education, using her bilingual skills, using the empathy she'd built from years of survival. One afternoon, she helped a woman from Guatemala apply for asylum. The woman had 3 children and spoke only Spanish. She'd been in the country for 6 months, sleeping in a shelter, terrified of being deported. Elena sat with her for 2 hours, translating forms, making phone calls, explaining the process step by step. When they finished, the woman took Elena's hands and said, "Gracias. You gave me hope." Elena cried on the subway ride home. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense that she was finally doing what she was meant to do. The second serious crisis came on a Thursday evening in October, the week before Elena's final exam in post-colonial literature. The restaurant was busy, every table full, when a young woman walked in with a camera crew, not a professional crew, just 2 friends with smartphones and ring lights. She wore designer clothes and had the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Elena was seating a family of 4 when the woman approached. "Oh my God!" the woman said loudly, her voice cutting through the dining room. "You're the waitress from the video, the one who destroyed that rich guy." Elena's stomach dropped. She recognized the woman, a social media influencer with 1 million followers who made content out of confrontation. The phones were already recording. "I'm working right now," Elena said politely. "If you'd like a table, I can seat you." "I don't want a table," the woman said. "I want to know if that video was staged. My followers think it was fake." The dining room went quiet. Elena felt every eye on her, felt the familiar weight of being watched, judged, reduced to entertainment. "It wasn't staged," Elena said, her voice steady. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd respect the other guests and lower your voice." "See, this is what I'm talking about," the woman said to her cameras. "She's got attitude. That's why the video went viral." Elena took a breath. She wanted to walk away, wanted to call security, wanted to scream. But she'd learned, over the past 2 years, that dignity wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to play the game. "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave," Elena said. "If you don't, I'll call the police for harassment." The woman laughed. "Harassment? I'm a customer." "You're not a customer," Elena said. "You're here to create content at my expense. That's not the same thing." She turned to the manager on duty, not Sophia, but Marco, the line cook who'd been promoted to floor manager. "Marco, can you please call the police?" Marco nodded and pulled out his phone. The influencer's confidence wavered. Her friends looked nervous. Within 2 minutes they were gone, but the damage was done. The video posted that night. Rude waitress threatens to call cops on influencer. By morning, it had 500,000 views. Elena didn't go to class. She stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of exposure crush her. The comments were brutal. She thinks she's better than everyone. Typical server with an attitude. Someone should fire her. Nico knocked on her door. Elena, you okay? I'm fine, she lied. You're not fine, Nico said. He sat on the edge of her bed. But you will be. You've survived worse than some idiot with a camera. Elena looked at her brother. This skinny 15-year-old who'd grown up too fast, who'd learned resilience from watching her, and felt something shift. He was right. She'd survived their father's death, their mother's grief, dropping out of school, working doubles, carrying the weight of a family on her shoulders. She could survive this too. She got up, she went to class. She took her exam and scored a 95. Meanwhile, Ethan called the company's legal counsel. I want a cease and desist letter sent to that influencer, he said. And I want a formal request to the platform for a takedown based on harassment. That's going to escalate things, the lawyer warned. It might bring more attention. Good, Ethan said. Let it escalate. Elena Duarte is not entertainment. And I want that message to be very, very clear. The platform took down the video 3 days later. The influencer posted an apology, insincere and vague, but public. The storm passed, the way storms do, leaving behind only the memory of rain. When Elena saw Ethan next, she didn't thank him. She didn't have to. They'd moved past gratitude into something deeper, something that didn't need words. Elena graduated on a cold December morning, the kind of cold that comes before snow. The sky was white, the air sharp, and the campus looked like something out of a postcard. She wore a dress borrowed from Maya, the hostess she'd trained, and kept her Cielo name tag in her pocket like a talisman, a reminder of where she'd been, what she'd survived. Nico sat in the audience, his Stuyvesant uniform pressed and clean, a smile splitting his face. Next to him sat Mr. Hassan, the history teacher who'd believed in both of them. And somewhere in the back, anonymous in the crowd, Ethan Marquez stood with his hands in his pockets, watching. When they called Elena's name, she walked across the stage, and the applause was just for her. Not for anyone else. Not for a viral video, or a scholarship, or a Millionaire's redemption arc. Just for her. Elena Duarte, 28 years old, English literature degree, survivor. She looked out into the audience and found Nico's face. He was standing, clapping, tears streaming down his cheeks. She mouthed the words, "We did it." Because it wasn't just her degree. It was theirs. Every late night he'd done homework while she studied. Every doctor's appointment he'd sat through without complaint. Every time he told her, "You got this," when she wanted to quit. This was their victory. After the ceremony, Elena found Ethan in the crowd. He looked at her in her cap and gown, and his eyes were red. "Congratulations," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you," Elena said, "for everything." "You earned this," Ethan said. "I just opened a door. You walked through it." They stood there in the cold, surrounded by families celebrating, and Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. "The foundation wants to offer you a job," Ethan said, "coordinating language programs for service workers, full-time, benefits, salary. You'd be helping people like you, people who need a second chance." Eleanor's breath caught. "I'd have to leave Cielo." "Not entirely," Ethan said. "You could keep a few shifts if you want. Train your replacement. Leave on your terms." Eleanor thought about it. About the dining room she'd worked for years, about the team she'd built, about the life she'd carved out between tables and textbooks. She thought about walking away, and she realized she wasn't sad. She was ready. "I'll take the job," she said. "On one condition. I train someone to replace me properly. I'm not leaving the team in the lurch." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Ethan said. 3 months later, Elena started at the foundation. She kept 2 shifts a week at Cielo, Wednesday lunch and Saturday brunch, until she'd trained her replacement, a young woman named Carmen who reminded Elena of herself at 25, determined, exhausted, fighting for something better. On Carmen's first solo shift, Elena sat at the bar and watched her work. Marco brought her coffee without being asked. Maya, the hostess, squeezed her shoulder as she passed. Lisa, the interior design student, left her a note. "You'll always be one of us." Elena realized then that she wasn't leaving a job. She was leaving a family, but she was also building a new one. Ethan made their relationship public without fanfare. No press release, no announcement, just a quiet shift from friend of the family to the person I'm building a life with. They went to book club together. They had dinner with Nico. They walked through Central Park on Sunday mornings, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. People noticed, of course. There were whispers, speculation, the occasional snide comment. But Elena had learned that other people's opinions were just noise. What mattered was the life she was building, the work she was doing, the family she was caring for, the love she was choosing. Sofia Noguera, the restaurant owner, watched it all from a distance. She'd resisted, fought, tried to protect her business from what she'd seen as chaos. But in the end, she'd been wrong. Elena hadn't hurt Cielo de Salamanca. She'd made it better. The culture of respect Ethan had insisted on, the staff training Elena had implemented, the sense that every person who walked through the door mattered. These were the things that made the restaurant thrive. Sofia called Elena one afternoon, months after she'd left. "I wanted to apologize," Sofia said, "for the way I treated you, for not seeing what you were building." "Thank you," Elena said. "That means a lot." "For what it's worth," Sofia continued, "you taught me something. You taught me that dignity isn't a luxury. It's a requirement." They didn't become friends, but they reached an understanding, and that was enough. Nico graduated from Stuyvesant 2 years later. He'd been accepted to Columbia on a full scholarship, engineering, like he'd always dreamed. At the graduation, he gave a speech about resilience, about the people who'd believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. He didn't name Elena, but everyone knew who he was talking about. Ethan and Elena married on a quiet Saturday in June in the courtyard of the foundation's offices. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends, surrounded by books and plants and the kind of light that only comes in early summer. Eleanor wore a simple dress. Ethan cried during the vows. Nico stood as best man, his Stuyvesant ring glinting in the sun. They didn't have a honeymoon. They went back to work on Monday, Eleanor coordinating programs at the foundation, Ethan managing his investments, both of them building something that mattered more than money or status or viral videos. They bought an apartment in Washington Heights, close to Elena's old building, close to the life she'd built before Ethan was part of it. They cooked dinner together on weeknights. They invited Nico over for Sunday meals. They volunteered at the book club, at the clinic, at the community center, where Elena had first learned English. The life they built wasn't extraordinary. It was ordinary, quiet, full of small kindnesses and shared meals and real care. It was the kind of life that doesn't make headlines, doesn't go viral, doesn't get written about in tabloids. But it was theirs. One evening, years later, Elena and Ethan walked through Central Park as the sun set over the city. The air smelled like autumn, wood smoke and fallen leaves, and the first breath of winter. They held hands, comfortable in silence, and Elena thought about the night at Cielo de Salamanca when everything had changed. She thought about the $1,000 bill on the table, the humiliation, the viral video. She thought about the scholarship, the internship, the degree she'd earned by refusing to quit. She thought about Nico, thriving at Columbia. She thought about the family she helped at the foundation, the ones who came to her desperate and left with hope. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. Elena smiled. "I'm thinking that you came to the restaurant that night looking for power, but you found something better." "What's that?" "Humanity," Elena said. "You found out what it means to be human." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I think we both did." They walked on through the park, two people who'd started as strangers, connected by shame and survived through grace. The city moved around them, taxis honking, sirens wailing, people rushing home to their own ordinary, extraordinary lives. And in the fading light, Elena realized something she'd known all along, but had never quite believed. Dignity wasn't something you earned or bought or performed. It was something you gave yourself, and then offered to others. The lesson whispered on that first night had stayed for good,